Now we have a very important presentation from Sister Mut on Africans and diaspora reclaiming childbirth on a global scale.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for an interesting and powerful and enlightening and powerful event. We are grateful and blessed to be here this evening. Beyond the return. So I know we've been celebrating, and I know we've been celebrating the wonders of Ghana and the wonders of the diaspora, but I want to look at something of a more serious nature because it affects us here in the diaspora and it affects you yourselves at home. And so I'm looking at the way in which we birth. Next slide, please. So who is this lady standing here? So I wanted to share a little bit about myself, just a little, because in my journey, coming into my own consciousness as a young woman, 17 years ago, I was looking at this whole thing around DNA and results, and looking to find my way and find my path inside of my own consciousness. And I already knew that on my mother's side was Nigeria, though we are Caribbean descent, Guyana and Barbados. I already knew on my mother's side it was Nigeria, but I also knew that on my father's side it was Ghana. Fente is our name. But I didn't know enough about my Nigerian bloodline or my mother's mitochondrial DNA. So I looked to get a test, a DNA test many years ago with an organization, this organization here, and they at the time had the largest database in Cambridge. And if you see the little red dots, you'll find that those are little markers, show my tribal markings. So you'll see the different areas in the Niger region, Mauritania, Senegal, and you'll see Morocco and Saudi, and you'll see the different tribes in which I have come. So it is an honor, understand that it is a real honor for me to be dealing with this and bridging this gap, because it was a gap that I was new and was aware of and was longing for that bridge. Next slide, please. So who am I? I am a professional birthing partner, what is called a doula here, which at home you would call a traditional midwife or a traditional birth attendant. So I wanted to address that this evening because I know that there is a conversation that happens here and there's a conversation that happens abroad around the mortality. And we know that we're in a crisis right now. We have different situations going on across the world. We have a lockdown, we have a pandemic, and we have conversations that we are concerned about in terms of our growth and population and what is being done about that. So I want to address this area because I think it's an important area for us to engage in going forward and bridging that gap and sharing our skills. So as a doula, a professional birthing partner, my role, similarly to a traditional birth attendant, but we work in a way which we work with a family, we work with a couple prior to birth and in the middle of labor and post-birth. Now in Ghana, the role of a doula would be about close to 8,000 cedis per birth. So know that that role is very much valued here in this country and still is very new for a lot of the demographic. I'm also a free birther, and this is me in the picture just here. And this picture here in particular, with the sculpture, a free birther is a woman who chooses to have her children with no midwife present by choice. So as a free birther, one of the things for me is I had a particularly pain-free birth 20 years ago with my first one. Loved it and thought, wow, I could have just done it myself without a midwife. So I felt robbed and decided that I would do it myself the second time around and the third time around. I'm a mother to 3 sons, and second birth was very much for me what I would call a village birth. I had about 15 people at the birth, men drumming in the kitchen, women chanting, And I trained everybody. By that time, I was already a doula. This was in 2009, and I became a doula in 2003. And I trained everybody around me to be my pain relief. And I knew that I could do this. And I train women in fearlessness, and that's the role I have. But I wanted to say that because it's something that you're training, and it's not something I would advocate for anyone just to go off and do. Yeah? So that is my disclaimer. However, I recognize that birth is different for every woman and every being. And that means some births are going to be in hospitals, some births are going to be at home, and some births are going to be in unexpected places. And so this is me with a baby, one of my babies, not my child, one of my clients' babies. And it was a hospital birth. It was not an easy birth, but it just goes to show that these things happen and you can still have a powerful and empowering experience. Following from that, I'm a relational evolution coach. I work with couples and I look at the relationships and we unpack them and look at them in detail. And we take a look at what's working and what's not working. Next slide, please. So I want to talk about doulas because I wanted to talk to you about traditional birth attendants, mainly. So I want you to see the connection. And there was a study, the Coltrane Review, in 2017, which is it's a major study in this area. And it concludes about the continuous support during labour may improve outcomes for women and infants, including increased spontaneous vaginal birth, shorter duration of labour and decreased caesarean birth, and following. So what I am saying is it shortens labour. What I am saying is you are less likely to need the same level of pain relief by having that continuous support. Why? Because when you have that continuity of care, hormonally, you are more relaxed. If you have a midwife, possibly she may leave 3 hours or 2 hours after you've just met her and you have a completely different midwife and the energy is shifted and the state of mind of that woman has shifted. Next slide, please. So, here we are in 2020, and this was August 2020, this article in The Independent. Why are so many black women still dying in childbirth? 1 in 5 black women in the UK are dying of childbirth. Yeah? How is that possible? Now, why I gave you a little bit of a story about me being a doula is I was this close to becoming a midwife, like, you know, a stone's throw away. Had all the qualifications, all the grades, everything ready. And I couldn't understand the stats. I couldn't understand that the reviews, all the books, all the textbooks, they referenced Africa from the very, very beginning, yeah? That is the base and the source of their information at all times, yeah? And at the same time, when you look at their statistics and the mortality rate, okay, we've heard about that. We hear about it all the time. For those who don't know, in the UK, we hear about the stats in Africa all the time about the mortality. So I haven't actually given you any stats on the mortality in Africa, intentionally, yeah? I've given you our stats to show you that there isn't much difference in what's going on. Now, that's what we're going to get to. So I wanted to understand how could that be possible that you're still having mortality, the same mortality rates are pretty much the same. And that has to do with a lot of intervention, medical intervention here, and also neglect, but we'll get onto that. Next slide, please. So, in this review, it's the Embrace report, and this was a major report that came out between 2015 and 2017 and got updated in 2019. And inside of this review, it says, if I just touch a little bit on it, it says 44% of women who died had good care. Now let's see the contradiction. However, improvements in care which may have made a difference to the outcome were identified for 29% of the women. So what does that really say? That says we did give good care, but we didn't give good care at the same time. Confusing. Next slide, please. And here we are in the States. Same stats. The US finally has maternal mortality data. Black mothers still fear the worst. This is January 2020. So what is actually going on? Next slide, please. So here we see this between 2007 and 2018, and the 2018 stats. And you can see what is going on in terms of what is happening statistically with black women. You see that here, 42.8, number of deaths is per 100,000 live births, 42.8, and over here you see 37.1. So I'll tell you a little bit about why I've noticed what I've noticed. I've noticed that one of the things as a doula, the joy of being a doula and a professional birthing partner means that you get to attend to these women when you know that the staff are fully engaged in dealing with emergencies and also looking for crisis in the space. You also know that your role there allows them to actually get on with their role, doing what they do best, which is looking for problems. And my job is to ease those problems. And so you can see that, and where we look at the statistics for having a doula and the lowering of labour duration, the need for pain relief, even it's linked to lower cases of postnatal depression, better birth outcomes, better childbirth experiences, less chances of cesarean section, less chances of vacuum and ventouse. All of those things stack up. So I'm not going to go too deep into this, but I did want to touch on this because I think it's a very important area for our community to understand that there isn't much difference. And what I really want to understand is what's happening in Africa right now. Next slide, please. Forward, please. It's all right. Okay, so what does it say? It says the new statistics are similar to figures from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the umbrella agency for the National Center for Health Statistics. The CDC has found that about 700 women die from complications related to pregnancy or childbirth every year, putting the US in last place among all developed nations in terms of maternal mortality. So when people are rushing over here to the UK or rushing to the States to have their babies, and that happens a lot. People rushing from the Caribbean to have their babies in the States, or people rushing over here to have their babies because they think it's going to be the better option. Understand that what you have here, even down to certain remedies that you use in Africa, you use black cohosh, blue cohosh, and we use them in particular forms. We don't use them the same way. We use them in homeopathic remedies. We use them in different doses, but we use the exact same herbs for labor. So what do we need to do? So here we are. Again, this was a news report in January from the same report. Black women have historically had the highest maternal mortality rates. Researchers do not have a clear explanation, but they suspect a combination of institutionalized racism in society and the healthcare system, as well as black women increased susceptibility to certain health conditions such as obesity and hypertension. Black women are less likely to have access to quality prenatal care. That is where the traditional birth attendant, that is where the doula, professional birth partner, comes into play. And we must take a look at this area really seriously. Next slide, please. This is why we need to take this seriously, because this is in February 2020, and trained traditional birth attendants don't ban them. So what's going on? I want to know what's going on at home in our motherland right now. Traditional birth attendants remain to be the main providers for delivery services, especially in rural and remote areas. Rather than banning them, governments should support them to reduce maternal and child mortality and ensure that they get adequate training. Now, I don't know what the training is currently, and there may be this whole concern about sterilization and the right equipment, and I get it. But I also get that here we are, and we are expressing our love and adoration for our homelands. Ghana, we are talking about at this time, and all of Africa, because this affects us all. And if we are talking about Ghana, I am putting out a request to Ghana to take this on, and to take on the adequate training. Let's exchange skills. Let's learn from each other, because you know something that I don't know, and I may know something that you don't know. We don't have, as doulas, we don't have many situations at all where there's a mortality situation. In fact, what we do have is less chance of a mortality situation. So we have to be clear that there's something that we need to exchange in our communication so that we get it right. Because there is a demand for our spirit, our energy, our creativity, and even our blood. Yeah? And so I want to implore you all, as women, as fathers to be, as mothers to be, to look into this area more closely. Look into this area, because this is an area we need. Our children are our future, and I don't say that loosely, but if we aren't taking care of ourselves and taking care of each other inside of this, and taking back what we know to be our learning, our traditions, understand that all the textbooks here that they learn from, Miles and Mays, which is the main midwifery books that they use, and they change them, edit them every 4 years, just a little edit, just because they're like the Bible, yeah? And so they use those two books and they edit them, and we have to understand, you know, sometimes I'm sharing this as well because I'm talking to those who are colonial, and, you know, we'll look at the medical fraternity as some kind of savior, and I think it's time for you to take a look at what's happening across the globe, because the stats remain the same. And if the stats remain the same, then what's going on? What we need to learn is about our anatomy. What we need to learn is about our herbs. What we need to learn is about our positioning. I'll give you an example. Lying on your back. This is done solely for comfort. This is not done for our comfort. This is done for the medical fraternity's comfort. Babies going uphill, coming uphill to come out is not logical. However, you standing here and you just standing like this and just having a bend or a squat, that's 33% extra room for the baby to come out. It's common sense. So we need to start thinking about those things, no matter what part of the world you're in, whether it's rural, city, I don't care what you're doing. What I do care is that our children need to be born with the best possible start. And if there's a drive to depopulate the planet, we need to take that back. We need to take back childbirth, and we need to understand that our children are an economy, our economy, not somebody else's. Next slide, please. So, again, going back to my point, why textbooks may need to update what they say about birth canals. A new study shows that the structure of the human pelvis varies between populations, which could have implications for how babies are birthed. Now, one of the things that happens, why a lot of there is a major concern about this 1 in 5 black women in the UK dying in childbirth, is because they've studied us. They've studied us for years. They've got funding, PhDs, through funding us. And funding themselves to study us and our birthing strategies. And what will happen is they will take our birthing strategies and say, oh, you know what, actually that's savage. or it's not civil. And we have to understand that those things are, if you understand what's happening in childbirth right now, they're opening up birth centers. They're looking at birth centers as, okay, there's a place for women to be able to give birth in a more natural environment. If a woman, it's the nature of childbirth. If a woman is in a state of fear, let's say a hurricane is happening, that woman, doesn't matter how that baby wants that baby to come out, that baby is staying put, because it's all about that sensation and that safety. Now, if I come into a room and I have bright lights, camera, action, I'm a doctor coming into the room and I've never met you before and I've been laboring for 3-4 hours and I've never met you and I'm not really saying your name, I'm looking at a chart, I know you by your chart, that is going to have an impact on how I deliver. And often they see us as, well, you know, where we can do it, traditionally we can do it. But women are still women. We still have feelings, we still have sensations, we still have an awareness of, okay, we feel vulnerable during our labour. And during that labour time, we need to be cared for. Hence why our role becomes so valuable as a traditional birth attendant, a traditional midwife, a doula, professional birthing partner, birthing companion, birthing attendant, call it what you will. What's important is that we understand the nature of childbirth and we take it right back. So when you look at this, it says in comparison of two human pelvises, the top more oval shape, representative of the European, North African and Native Americans, and the bottom is more circular, representative of the Sub-Saharan African and Asian. So already we have to look at how we label. We have to already look at, okay, what is happening in that woman's pelvis, and actually look at each woman as an individual case. Because what is actually happening is they're looking at us as a blanket cases. They can do it, they're fine. They're one of the reasons why women are dying in childbirth as well, is because they also know that in the communities, there may not be the same economic resources to sue, litigation. So they will use their time, they will use their energy, and they will take their time and energy with other races because they are concerned about litigation. Whilst doing that, leaving black women in a state of fear and concern. So our roles as traditional birthing partners, as birthing attendants, and even midwives with the same mindset, we need you all on board for this, for a new generation of children to come through safely. Next slide, please. So, if this wasn't really important, if the role of doulas was not an important role, why in 2003 did the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, which is a major hospital here, for those who don't know, why would they, Alison Dodds, lead midwife of the birthing unit, I know somebody who's actually worked with them, so I actually know that this is a factual case. But there was a funding went through to them, and part of their funding to do research and other things, one of our recent projects, the first of its kind in this country, was to employ doulas for support. So they know the role. Don't be fooled. They know the role. They piloted this for about 3 to 4, maybe 5 years max, and we haven't heard anything about it since. So they've done the stats, they've looked at everything, they've seen how we helped shorten labour, and now they're discarding it. And now we're seeing these stats rise again. Next slide, please. Now, this is one of the reasons why it's so important that we take back birth. And innovation. We need to be the innovators. Why do we need to be the innovators? Because you have things like this. The idea which led to the development, this is called the epinode. The idea which led to the development of the epinode originates from Africa, where they gently insert a calabash or gourd into the vagina to stretch the pelvic muscle, floor muscles, to facilitate a natural birth and reduce I don't know what it says there, but it's to tear, right? Perinatal injury. From this age-old African custom still used today, the soft inflatable Epino balloon and birth exercise program was conceived and developed into a modern-day medical device. Now, this is a German scientist, yeah, and of course, they would have gone in. This proves that they've gone into our countries and they have studied our women and they have taken our ideas and they have monetized it. And this is a device you can probably get online. So what am I saying? What am I saying is take back birth. I'm saying do not give away your ideas. Pull your ideas together, pull your resources together. Understand that our country needs you. You are, we call it the motherland, and we don't say it loosely. Many of us don't say it loosely. We can't use our mobile phone without Africa's resources. So understand we need you more than you may need us. So understand the importance of your resources and working together inside of this. No more should people be able to come into our homelands and take an idea. I acknowledge that he hasn't actually stolen the idea in a way where he hasn't acknowledged Africa as the source. That's something. However, 10 years from now, we probably won't see it. If it was marketed again, you probably won't see it like that. We'll never hear X, Y, and Z or where that actually came from, the source of it. Next slide, please. So this is just to come to the end of my presentation and the importance of why we have to reclaim childbirth on a global scale. We must really look at the source of what we do. We must get our minds right, our emotions right, our research right. We must really look at our skills together, and we must join forces in knowing the power of birth and reclaiming birth as a community here and across the waters. Thank you so much. I hope that the presentation was important for you, and I hope that we will continue to work together in our community going forward from here and abroad. My name is Sister Mut. I am the founder of Urban Goddess Evolution, and you can get me on urbangoddessevolution.com, or you can email me admin@urbangoddessevolution.com, and you can Insta me at Urban Goddess Evolution. Thank you so much.
Yeah, very sobering and very worrying presentation, but very important that we are informed about that. Thank you, Sister Mut.
Start when you're ready, yeah?
It's rolling. Welcome to GKTV, the UK's #1 conscious platform. We are here, BLACKTRICITY, and live in the place. With us right about now, just gave an absolutely fabulous presentation in regards to childbirth and all good things with what is termed as doulas. We have once again here with us at Gotkush TV, BLACKTRICITY, Beyond the Return. Welcome, Sister Mut.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Thoroughly enjoyed the presentation in regards to the importance of childbirth and making sure that we bring the expertise to the African continent. That's what I got mainly from. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, that's right, absolutely. I think it's important because we often see ourselves as very different and we're very much the same. And I think the skill set, even down to some of the herbs we use, are the same. We just use it in different forms and maybe different potencies. So we have to bridge that gap. And that's the most important thing, is understanding, okay, that mortality rate that we always hear about in Africa, It's the same mortality rate that we're having over here in the West. So what's going on? And that's the bigger question and a deeper question, and it needs to be unpacked here and abroad, but it definitely needs to be looked at abroad, because there is this fallacy that everything here is rosy.
The thing I really wanted to ask, and hopefully you could bring across to us, was childbirth has been such a natural thing for human beings, humanity, for thousands of years. And now it seems to be ever more complicated in the West. The further we go on, where we're seeing more moves away from maybe a natural form of birth to the science of in vitro fertilization, and also as well when people are giving birth, more cesarean based, which I know limits you to a couple of births. So I think my question is, how is it that something so natural to our women has become so complicated?
Intervention is a big thing. Litigation is a big thing. When you're having to deal with hospitals that are scared of litigation more than they're scared of actually producing a real powerful and positive service, that holds a lot of weight. People are also de-skilled now. You know, the same skills that they used to have to do a cesarean, you know, to have a woman deliver naturally. A lot of the training that comes through now, as the generations become more academic, technological, but also academic. Academics weighs heavily. You know, getting the right amount of births, having the right stats on, you know, making it in midwifery becomes an important factor more than the actual service. It's that care, it's that attention to detail that's missing, it's that looking in another woman's eyes and knowing in that moment, don't say a word to her, she's going to pop. You know, in terms of her emotions, you know, that when a woman is in labor and she may, you know, you see these things in the films where, you know, don't talk to her right now, she's, you know, she's right in the heavy throes of childbirth. That's actually a science. To be able to leave a woman, it's called a no-hands approach. You don't have to, in midwifery, what they do, which interrupts labor. If you check a woman every 15 minutes and she's in a pattern, what happens is she gets herself into a rhythm. And she finds a rhythm, and then suddenly somebody comes along and says, okay, can I listen to the baby? And then she has to come back again out of that state, because childbirth is a particular state. You're going into a warrior-like state for you to deliver. You've got to let go of all your inhibitions. You've got to let go of your fears. You've got to take control of your mind and let go of any concerns in that moment and not try to control your body. That becomes another factor if you are a controlling type of female or live in an environment where, you know, you're business-centered and you're doing more, you know, the role that you have right now becomes more masculinized. It's not so much that you're masculine, but you may be in a CEO of a company. That then says that, you know what, you need some more support to relax. You need more support to centralize yourself, to know what's in front of you, to trust your own process, to trust your body. And that training doesn't get done through your contact with your midwife in the same way. You see her, she does your blood, she does your series of questions, tick, 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 and you're on your way. You've had a 10-minute appointment. And you have a few of those during the course of your pregnancy, and it's not the same as the continuity of care. And that's why our role, even as a traditional midwife or a traditional birth attendant, the role, that continuity, that care, that relationship that you develop, you become like family to those people for the rest of your life. Like the people that I've done births with, they're like family now. Like I'm like the extension, you know, like I'm the village midwife to them. Like, you know, you
gotta bring in.
Listen, the children, I'm coming to birthday parties and the babies are still, and they're 13 years old. The last one, I went last year to one of them. It's 13. It's like, and every time I come, I know, they make the announcement that I arrived. It's like, that's how you're treated, but that is because your role is valued, and they know what it could have been like. Those mothers know it could have gone this way without the presence of someone. Doesn't have to be me, but someone who does a role like that, who's going to give you that continuity of care. And that is what it is. A lot of people are de-skilled now, and it's and losing the art and the science of childbirth.
If somebody listening right about now wanted to get into being a traditional doula, or even wanted to contact one, how would they go about it? Because as you're saying, it's a rarity at this present time, and it's a skill that's been lost.
It is a skill that's been lost, but over here it's becoming kind of more and more apparent. I think people are looking for it more and more, especially during these lockdown times. They've actually stated. In the
How do you find it?
Well, in the guidelines, they're saying you can have that person as your support bubble. You know, a doula as part of your support bubble, because they know that care is key. How would you find a doula? You can Google them. You can find many sources of doulas. You only have to type in the word. You can find one in your area. Often they're localized. Obviously, it's better to find someone who's localized to you. If you want, I'm in London and you're in Birmingham, that's going to be tricky. You want to be able to find someone who is in your area so that you're in a position where they can get to you easily. You might want to find a woman who is of color, so you may have to do some checking. There are databases for that that you can look into. I won't do any advertising about that, but there are databases for where centralized, where doulas are centralized. Some doulas have been doing it for many, many years. I don't centralize anymore or become part of a hub, so to speak, because I've been doing it for such a long time. It's a different skill for me in that sense, and a different path. But I think it's quite easy to find over here, and it's still very, very easy to find in the States. I think it's really important that we start linking into those things. And women who've never heard of it, this is going to be, today is probably going to be possibly the first time somebody's ever heard of that. So obviously the contact details, you can contact me, can have a conversation. I get a lot of calls about women wanting me to train them. So that's an area that I may be looking at training women to become doulas.
Could you see yourself training women to become doulas on the motherland, on the continent of Africa? There's a lot of countries.
100%, yeah. I'd love to work. Personally, I'd love to work. Part of the reason for getting involved in this in the first place, for me, was when I had my son pain-free, and then I had the second one, no midwife, and the third one, no midwife. For me, it became more and more clear and more apparent that, the skills are not. I will be reading a book and I'll be like, okay, they've sourced Africa again. Every book, every textbook sources Africa for its statistics, for its data. So it's kind of like, why am I going through you guys, the middleman? There are lots of skills, particular skills that you have, that I have. Let's transfer skills, let's exchange skills, let's get this dialogue going, and let's save your babies and you can save ours.
Well said. I don't think I can add to that at this present time. Hopefully you'll come back and do some more with us. And if anybody wanted to find you, where can we find you? You
can find me on Insta, Urban Goddess Evolution, or you can find me at www.urbangoddessevolution.com.
Marvellous. Thank you so much, Sister Mut. Yeah, a doula in our community who has been helping with childbirth, educates about childbirth, and the main thing in educating and telling us about childbirth, Sister Mut does it with African eyes, African feelings and African ears, which is extremely important as we are here having a great time at Pre-KWanzaa Festival, Beyond the Return, and BLACKTRICITY. Don't forget it, BLACKTRICITY on your screen. Keep it where you got it. The UK's #1, Got Kush TV. We're in the house.